Sometimes those who are supposed to love you tell you they hate you. Sometimes the ones you want to love you say they do, and then they beat you up. Sometimes a miracle happens, and after decades of abuse, someone finally treats you like you're the most lovable being on the planet. And their love kisses away all the old hurts and helps you learn to love yourself. But if that love is same-sex love, sometimes the same society that looked the other way when your fingers were being broken finally takes notice of you, but only to condemn. Oh no, no matter how much it blesses you, no matter how much joy and peace and healing it has brought you, you can't have that kind of love.
In my childhood, I was abused mentally, physically, and verbally every day of my life, and my self-esteem was torn down from the time I was 5 until I was 17 when I was able to leave my mama's house. My daddy was a loving man, but he was never there. I attempted suicide at the age of 16. You see, I thought maybe if I could commit suicide, my mom would turn around and say, "I love you." But she never did. She once told me that she had always wished she could have dropped me in the sewer. I ran as fast as I could the minute I could leave her house. And after that, I started to grab onto anybody I thought would love me. There was a woman who acted like she loved me, but she tried to make me into a prostitute. I was too scared to do that. You'll hear more about her later. And then I ended up with a married man who I had a baby with. I felt that he did love me, but his love came with abuse. At least he said he loved me, something that my mother never said. He'd give me hugs. You know, I live for hugs, because she never hugged us. By the time I got with this guy, the abuse was acceptable, because he was at least saying that he loved me. Finally, after 3 years, I walked. I left that, but only to go on to another man who was more abusive than the first man was. But the abuse was still acceptable, as long as he used the word love. I could deal with the broken fingers and busted hands, because I'd gotten all that from my mom all those years, and I never got an "I love you." So finally, after 15 years with him, with abuse, with him molesting my daughter, I still held on to it. I knew it was wrong, but I just couldn't let go of that love. I was just starved for it so badly. But finally, after 15 years, something just broke in me. By then, I was done with men. They had all abused me, and with all that abuse, I was just done. There was an older woman in my life. She had become a friend when I was with that second guy. She ran a laundromat, and I would go over there, sit and have coffee there with her every day. We just clicked. It was 3 years before I realized, oh wow, she's a nice girl. At first we didn't talk on our relationship. We just talked on friendship. But it grew into more. She was there for the birth of my first grandbaby. She just took to it like we were family, you know? My kids loved her. She was my girl. Do you want to know how much she loved me? She had a diamond ring. It was given to her by her mother. And my dad was dead, and we were short on money for the funeral. So she came to me and she said, "I'll go pawn this ring, and you can take the money and pay for your dad's funeral." It took 3 years to get that ring back, and she never complained, not once. She is the one that made me realize that I could be loved without abuse. She just loved me, you know? She tried to love all the hurt away. The abuse of my mom, the abuse of men. She tried, but I was pretty damaged, you know. And in the end, I damaged her because of the love I didn't know how to accept. The pure, I'm going to love you. I'm going to accept you. No knocking you upside the head, beating you down verbally and mentally. I think that the damage I took her through, I was glad she left. No, she didn't leave. I left her. We were together for 15 years, but we came to a point where our relationship was just so rocky. It was so bad, I was starting to think about suicide again. And then I encountered the prostitute who had been my friend when I was younger. She had come back to the neighborhood. She was like shining. She was like a bright light. I asked her, "What have you been doing? What have you been up to? Tell me about it." She said, "I've accepted the Lord into my life." I couldn't believe it. Then a year later, she came back and it seemed like she was brighter than ever. That time it was, "Well, I don't know what it is that you got, who you know, but I would sure like to know that person." And she said, "Lenora, I've accepted the Lord into my life." Finally, it took me a few months, but finally I just said, "Okay, Lord, I'll accept you into my life." When I did, I was changed. I felt like my self-esteem was finally up there. My confidence was, well, there was nothing I couldn't do. And I felt like I was finally loved. But after a certain point, this friend, the one who'd been a prostitute, started ranting on my relationship with my girl. She thought that for God it was wrong. It started to eat at me. It started to change my attitude toward my girl, and I left her. I left her on really bad terms, and she was very hurt. And I hated to do it, because I loved her dearly. But it was like I was in a fight between loving God and loving her. I started to treat her like she was the devil. But she wasn't. She was a very good person. But I was too torn up. I walked away from her. Today, my life is different. When I came to Ames, I was finally able to realize that God loves you, regardless of who you are. And He just loves you. You know what I'm saying? Because of my relationship with her, I can finally stand up on my own and be the responsible adult that I had never been able to be before. You know? Because I was always leaning towards somebody propping me up. I had never been given a solid foundation to build from. I still cry about her sometimes, but it's not like it used to be. Because I know that today, I can stand up and be a woman. Now, I'm okay. I'm okay.